Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, because what else can I say except it's party time, dudes. Cowabunga. Yeah, forgive me, it'll probably be the last time I do that in this review, but that doesn't mean that I'm not excited for this toy, because this is, of course, the Transformers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collaborative effort Party Wallop, and it looks absolutely stellar. I call it Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that still sounds wrong to my UK brain, because of course here growing up it was Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. Rightly or wrongly, some of you may think that's absolute sacrilege if you grew up elsewhere, but that's just how it was over here, yeah? In any case, I'm sure there's a lot to say about this one, but before we get to it, I should mention that this review is brought to you by Transforverse.eu, a European-based Transformers retailer who have got a ton of robots in disguise in stock, everything from Generations to Studio Series to collaborative stuff like this. You absolutely want to go and check them out. And if you use the code Sixoverse, then you can get 5% off all items across the whole store with no minimum order quantity. So that's pretty spectacular, isn't it? There's a link for them down in the description below, so go and check them out when you can. Looking at Party Wallop though, it's fair to say that I love this packaging. I really like the kind of blend of the traditional Transformers logo at the top, and kind of looks a bit like the kind of vintage packaging with the grid and stuff going on a little bit as well, but with a distinct Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles flair. See, I'm being kind to you if you didn't grow up in the UK here and calling it Ninja, but it does look really good either way. Fairly basic but decent on the back with a picture of the toy and showcasing the fact that it can actually represent all four of the Turtles, which I think is a kind of neat gimmick, even though I do know that a lot of people are buying this thing 4 times over, which is kind of mad, but I guess to be anticipated. I mean, for my part, I'm absolutely happy just picking up the one of these guys. I definitely don't feel like I need multiples or anything like that, but I can understand the impulse nonetheless, because it is kind of a fun thing. Quite hard to get into though, man. But how do you get in here? Okay, seems like this bit kind of folds out the back here. It's fair to say this is not the most collector-friendly packaging I've ever seen, but no matter. I mean, for my part, I will be recycling all of this anyway, but hey-ho. Man, this has not been the most graceful unboxing I've ever done. Not to worry though, because the toy itself is looking really quite nice, so very excited to check this one out. Looks big and fun. Still got some bits of the vehicle mode left to go. Before we get to looking at all the accessories though, it is worth saying that the actual robot itself just looks really good. It's good chunky fun, as I say. It's bright and colourful and kind of bold and definitely has that Turtles vibe to it, though with like a nice mechanoid styling as well. So I mean, it really does feel like quite a decent collaboration between the two brands, like right off the bat, so I love it for that. I mean, it is probably worth me saying that if you're going into this with like an ounce of seriousness or pretentiousness about you, that you're like a serious collector and you don't like fun, this is not going to be the product for you, right? Because it's just inherently silly, as it should be, because well, that's a big part of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, to be frank. Straight out the box, you've got the kind of generic face with no mask there. You can swap that out in a minute, as we will do, but that already looks kind of cool. It's got the kind of classic turtle grimace. Now, most of what you see here is unpainted bare plastic, but they have added some paint on the chest, and that actually looks really cool and kind of helps it to stand out a little bit from the rest of the body. You have a little bit of kibble going on here with these kind of wheel sections just hanging off. I guess you could play that off as like armor or something. It certainly doesn't bother me. Really digging his little turtle feet as well. That's kind of cool. And this green that they've used is super saturated and looks really nice as well. The whole thing is like uber vibrant. Coming around to the rear, you'll see the back of the van kind of hanging off there, but it's actually fairly tidy and looks pretty cohesive. I guess you could say he's a shell former. Hey? Now, looking at articulation quickly, there is quite a bit going on. I mean, the head will move quite freely round and can actually look fairly decently up and down as well. Shoulders have got good range of motion. I mean, you've got this little bit of armor just here on the side, but if you move that up, then you can get the kind of full rotation round, can go all the way up to 90 degrees just there, so that's good. And there is a bicep rotation, but it's actually down here at the elbow. You've then got a soft ratchet joint in the elbows, which goes just slightly below 90 degrees, and there is actually a wrist swivel as well, which I didn't think there was initially, so pleased to see that. Now, it does have a good waist rotation as well, and then as far as the hips go, these pieces are actually connected to them, so they will move with it, which is slightly strange, but I guess it works. I mean, that comes up quite nicely to 90 degrees just there, and then you get, again, about a 90-degree bend at the knee. You do have thigh rotation also, and then you get a decent bit of ankle tilt to cap it all off. All of which kind of means that he's not got the most articulated robot mode I've ever seen, but it is essentially everything that you could wish for. I mean, I don't think he's going to be doing any like serious ninja moves or anything like that, but it's decent. It's probably worth me saying that whilst the size of the backpack doesn't bother me any, it is slightly annoying that it doesn't stay tabbed in better. I mean, it connects via these two little tabs just there, so you kind of want to just press that in like so, but if you do articulate the head, like too much, then it sort of pushes it a little bit out the way, just slightly impedes that there. I mean, it will stay tabbed in, but it has come undone a couple of times already, I've noted. You know, though, it's a kind of minor nitpick on what is otherwise a pretty fun, chunky, colourful robot mode that, I don't know, just kind of can't help but make you smile. Like, again, if you don't take it too seriously, the fun is there for you, you know? Now, before we get to looking at the individual accessories, then you can actually store everything away. So the first thing you want to do is fold these sections down and then lift the backpack up. And then coming around underneath here, you want to flip these yellow bits out of the way, and then that gives you space to store the 4 individual hats or helmets or whatever you want to call them for the individual turtles, the different characters. They just peg in under here. So that's a kind of little neat storage solution. I guess it enables you to keep them somewhere if you want to keep swapping them out. You can then store all of the weapons as well, starting with Donatello's bow staff, which just clips in here. It's then just a matter of closing all of this up like so, and then collapsing the backpack down again. Next, you've got the little sign which sits atop the party wagon in vehicle mode. That just goes in there. And then if we come down to what is essentially his bum, then you've just got the rear spoiler for the vehicle mode as well, so you can just plug that in. Now, coming back to the rest of the weapons, if you flip up these shoulder sections, then you can tab in Michelangelo's nunchucks just underneath there. That's very neat, and then that just folds back down. And of course you want to get the other one on the other side like so, and then coming further down you can tab in Raphael's sai on either side on those little hip flaps, and finally Leonardo's swords just go on the sides of the backpack like so. You've then got this little pizza accessory which is kind of fun, but actually on the rear it's the Turtles logo, and that goes on the very front of the vehicle mode, like it's the bit that you often see on the front of the party wagon. That just tabs in there, and then if you flip that over you'll see that actually there's a little handle piece in here, so you just want to move that down, and then that can tab into the side of his arm panel just here using that rather large peg, and then that obviously acts as a bit of a shield for kind of defensive purposes if indeed you want that sort of thing. The other alternative is that you fold that little handle piece away, and then the whole thing just sits on Party Wallop's chest like so, and then actually it can just be a kind of alternate look for the robot mode, or that's where it needs to be for the transformation, so you can kind of get around the parts forming thing as well if that's something that actually bothers you. And I think that is some very cool design going on. Love the way that all the different weapons store. It's all pretty neat, all slots together really nicely, doesn't feel kind of cumbersome or anything like this, so I think there's tons of fun in there. It's the kind of thing that my son would really appreciate. I can already see him having a lot of enjoyment out of just putting these weapons into their various places, that kind of thing. It's really great, honestly. Again though, the big gimmick here is that you can actually turn this guy into all 4 of the individual turtles, and to do that you just remove the top of his head like so, which does look a little bit weird, but you can then replace it with any of the 4 options. So we'll go with Leonardo first. There he is. Now I definitely prefer the kind of bandana look to the default unmasked one out of the box. I didn't mind that, but I think this looks so much better. And then in a rather nifty little feature, you can actually use the belt buckle as well to represent the individual characters. So you just lift this little piece up like so, and then this section will rotate round, and it has a letter for each of the characters, exactly as you would expect to see. And so obviously you just find the one that you're looking for. In this case, Leonardo. There we go. Close it up and you're done. Of course, this being Leo, you then want to equip him with his swords, and then here you can see how that looks, representing the leader of the Turtles, and indeed opposite my Super 7 Ultimates version. And I'll do a similar comparison for all of the characters, but I absolutely love this set. Super 7 are kind of much maligned, and to be fair, a lot of the time that is kind of understandable, but in this case, this set, I think they absolutely killed it. And this is a really fun comparison to see. And then here we have him as Raphael, who some would say is the best turtle. They would be wrong to say that, of course, but we'll get to the actual best turtle in just a minute. But this does look really good and certainly brings the vibes versus that Super 7 version. And then of course we come to Party Dude Michelangelo, and I think the orange actually really suits this mold. Like, there's something about that colour in particular. Michelangelo is not my favourite, by the way, but there's something about the colour that really works on this mold. It just suits it so well. Also really love the way these nunchucks work on chains. I know it's simple, but really cool. And then finally we come to the actual best turtle, which is Donatello. As everybody knows, that's unanimous, right? Like, everybody agrees with me on that. But regardless, anyway, I think this looks great. And of course, it doesn't quite have the same skin tone as like the original toy color of Donatello, which this Super 7 version also imitates. And that was always something that I really liked about the original Turtle toys. I always thought that was kind of cool. And Donatello's especially, because it was kind of like the slightly darker, kind of brownish green, which of course this doesn't have. And to be fair, that's fine, because this is kind of aping the cartoon in many ways, but still it's a point to mention. I do wish that the bow staff was maybe a little bit longer, however. however. Like, don't get me wrong, this is absolutely fine, and I appreciate that it's not always about the size of the boat, that sometimes it's the motion of the ocean, but still I think this could have been a little bit longer and that might have been better. In any case, I think this robot mode is tons of fun. I love the fact that you can represent all 4 of the characters. I think that's kind of ingenious. The weapon storage is super cool as well. It's pleasingly articulated, it's got a lot of features going on. Again, I think my son would have a whale of a time with this, and I'm sure he will. But there's a lot of enjoyment to be had and very few grumbles, so that's pretty cool. And then in terms of other comparisons here, you can see him with a smattering of recent generations toys. You've got the Earthrise Optimus Prime mold, you've got the Studio Series Grimlock mold, and you've got the recent Legacy Voyager Vector Prime. And it's a bit of a random assortment of toys, I know, but it at least shows you how he shapes up in terms of size and whatnot. But of course, that's only half the story in a half shell, so it's time to go ahead and check out Transformation. And there we go, that's Transformation done, and it's really nothing too complicated. It's a little bit panel heavy at times maybe, and there's a few bits that are kind of a bit soft and spongy for my liking. I kind of prefer that slightly more, precision click that you get sometimes, but hey, it's still quite an enjoyable process. And the result is one that leaves me thinking that I'm gonna need to try and think of a lot of synonyms for fun, right? Because that's basically what it is at its core. It's just a bit of fun. Like, it's goofy as you like, it's just ridiculous in so many ways, and it's just a lot of fun. What can I say? I mean, one thing that does occur to me is that it really doesn't kind of match the majesty of what I remember anyway of the original Turtle Van, right? Like the original toy. And was it ever going to? I don't know. My recollection of that thing is that it's incredible, right? And maybe it's nostalgia speaking, I don't know, but this feels a lot more like a toy. Like, it's got a lot less features. You can't kind of sit the turtles in it or anything like this. There's no little figures included with it. So yeah, by comparison, it definitely doesn't stoke the imagination in maybe the way that vintage toy did, but still, yeah, there's something about this, definitely. I mean, the colours are nice and bright, it all looks fairly vivid. You've got that little pizza accessory on the front, which I still haven't found a practical use for, but it's there, and it does look kind of cool. Like, I don't know, this side section's a little bit plain for my liking, and some of the hinges and things like this around here are far too obvious. If I'm nitpicking, you got a bit of visible foot syndrome going on under the wheel there. This at the rear, I'm sorry, but that just looks like something out of Cars. Like, I cannot unsee that, Like, come on! And so I guess maybe it doesn't kind of wow me in the way that it might have done. If they'd done, like, for example, like what they've done with the G.I. Joe toys, like replicating the exact original vintage figures in the same scale and that kind of stuff, if they'd have done that with the Turtle Wagon, that would have been incredible. And look, this is not that, so maybe I shouldn't grumble, but it's honestly fine as it is. It's still kind of cool. I also maintain that this is the kind of thing my son would get a lot of enjoyment out of. I mean, firstly, it rolls really nice. It's got these little cannons on the roof that can move up and down, so definite bit of play value there. And in a neat touch, you can actually get a bit of weapon storage going on in the vehicle mode as well. So firstly, Raphael's size just kind of clip in on the thighs, just there on the robot mode thighs, and then you can get Leonardo's sword just kind of clipped in here. That goes in very tight, actually. That's a real, like, you've really got to press quite hard to get that in, but it will go if you apply a bit of force. I swear, it will go. There we go. But, I did initially think, where did the rest of them go? The nunchucks and the bow staff, but of course you just kind of have to know in advance that they need to be in the same place as they go in the robot mode, so kind of folded up inside the thing. So, but that's still really neat design. Slightly weird how the swords peek out the front here now, but it's not the end of the world. And I'm also finding that a number of these panels don't really want to stay tabbed in very well. Like just there, you can see they kind of pop out when you place one in, the other one pops out, so it's a bit of a moving feast. So that is annoying. Like, maybe there's just a bit of finessing to do with the whole thing. It's definitely less egregious on this side, although it still has that slightly spongy quality to it, where I just wish that this bit tabbed in a bit better than maybe it does. Overall then, this isn't my favourite collaborative effort in vehicle mode. Like, I don't think it compares to stuff like Agent Knight or Ectotron in terms of the vehicle mode presentation specifically, but it's still a fun toy overall, and I do appreciate its inclusion in this line. It definitely adds something. And the same is true with stuff like the recent Takara Tomy Lunar Cruiser Convoy as well. I mean, the presentation of that is, to me, top tier for the kind of retail product that we're talking about here, so it's a little bit night and day in that regard. And then you have him here with a couple of the recent legacy efforts. You've got Chase and Point Blank, and actually that scales kind of well, if anything. Like, maybe I was off about wanting like a bigger G.I. Joe style thing, because I think this actually kind of works. Ultimately then, I got a couple of little nitpicks about Party Wallop overall. It's definitely not perfect, but it is one that my son will enjoy. I've enjoyed it too, so even throwing the nitpicks in and considering how great it is to see a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover at long last, this surely has got to be a toot. As I mentioned before, this review is brought to you by Transforverse.eu, a European Transformers retailer which has got tons of different robots in disguise in stock, everything from Generations to Studio Series to Masterpiece and more besides. And you can get 5% off their whole store if you use the code Sixoverse. So what are you waiting for? I'd also be very grateful if you could leave me a like for today's effort, please, but otherwise that's it from me. So have a great rest of your day and cowabunga!